welcome to Church Experience Online. We're so happy you joined us today. As you watch this teaching video, if you have any questions or need help getting connected, please don't hesitate to reach out by phone or email. Also, our website is the best place to go if you would like to access helpful Growth Steps resources, join a serving team, connect in a life group, get your questions answered, or support this movement financially by giving online. At the end of this teaching video, you'll hear one of our Church Experience original worship songs, and we hope that gives you an opportunity to worship and reflect on what you learned. Thanks again for joining us at Church Experience Online.
So we've been teaching on this idea of perspective, the filters that we see our world through, how we see God, how we see others, and how we see ourselves. And I'm so excited about this message because I believe that this whole teaching series, this message has potential to radically transform and change our lives. Because if you think about it, our biggest problems, the most pain that comes into our lives, it comes through the avenue of things that can be traced back to our perspective, how we think. Because how we think and what we believe ends up coming out in what we do or don't do. And so if we could just change our perspective, if we could just change our filter, it has huge potential to radically change our lives. I think the idea of perspective is a lot like the glasses we wear. They shade everything else that we see. And you know, on a really sunny day, sunglasses can help because they filter out the bright light that might blind you otherwise. But if you don't clean off your lenses from time to time, if you don't keep them clean, what happens is that all that crud that gets on the lens, it blurs everything that you see. And I kind of wonder if there's things that we are looking at in our lives that if we could just change our perspective, how we're seeing them, how we're thinking about them, if it just wouldn't change everything else about our life. There's a very thought-provoking and interesting passage in the Bible in Proverbs chapter 30. It's actually a prayer, and I think this prayer has some real truth in it that could really impact us. It's Proverbs chapter 30. I'm gonna go ahead and read it to us, beginning in verse 7. 2 things I ask of you, Lord. Do not refuse me before I die. Keep falsehood and lies far from me, and give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Otherwise, I might have too much and disown you and say, who is the Lord? Or I may become poor and steal and so dishonor the name of my God. You know, I think this is a really interesting prayer because it asks God for 2 things. And the first one we're okay with. God, don't give me too little. Because if you give me too little, if I'm really struggling in life, then I might do things that I might not otherwise normally do. I might steal, right? I might take advantage of others. I might cheat to try to get ahead. I might do something immoral to get a job or keep a job or get a promotion. I might do things that are not pleasing to you so that I can have what I want or what I need. So God, don't give me too little. And I think we understand that prayer. You'd be okay with praying that prayer. But the other side of it, I thought was so interesting. So God, don't give me too little, but God, don't give me too much, or I might disown you. Now that's a courageous prayer. That's a prayer that I'm not sure many of us want to pray. God, don't give me too much. Don't give me too much, God, because I might get distracted by the things of this world and I might disown you, or I might not have time for you. God, I might push you out and start even worshiping the things of this world. My possessions might even start taking possession of my soul. So God, don't give me too much. And that is a bold prayer because it's practicing this idea of restraint, saying, God, I only want what you want for me. I only want what you want for me. You know, moving is a lot of times just chaos. You know, you're packing up all your stuff. You're moving maybe to an apartment across town or the next city over, and you got all your stuff. You got to get in the moving truck. And I remember after leaving our first apartment, a pretty newly married couple. We had all of our things laid out in front of our apartment complex. We're going to load the U-Haul truck, and we have friends and family there. And we're trying to figure out how to get everything on the truck. But funny how quickly things come together when it starts to rain, right? And like we were just throwing stuff in the back of the truck, getting it all ready. We were moving from this town in Indiana where we went to college to the Washington, D.C. area for jobs. And we had a change in our living conditions, so we had to move everything, obviously. But we also knew that there's another big change. In Washington, D.C., they have a ton of traffic on the highways. We knew we needed a dependable vehicle, and we didn't have one. But the problem was we had 3 vehicles. We had 3 vehicles, just none of them were dependable. So we decided to downsize from 3 to 1, which we've had ever since. We've had like a single vehicle. But at the time, we had 3. We had the Ford Festiva that was literally given to us by a friend. We actually paid him $100 because we felt bad. But he just wanted to get rid of it. And so he gave it to us, and it was a piece of junk. I mean, it really was. It had a hole in the muffler, and it was actually kind of cool because it sounded like a race car. Some of my friends thought it was amazing because every time I revved the engine, like it just sounded like this roar because the muffler just had this huge hole in it. And then our next best car was this $500 Buick that we had. And, you know, we're newly married. We're getting by with what we could, and we got a hold of this car for $500. We called it the Green Grenade because you never knew when it was going to blow up. And it was just true. It really could blow up anytime. In fact, the horn, one time I'm driving through a mall parking lot, and it just starts going off, and I couldn't stop it. I'm trying to shut it down, and nothing I can do. I'm banging on the steering wheel. It just is going off. Our hope was that when we go out on a date that we would have one of the 3 vehicles working. And if the Tempo, which was our nicest vehicle, which was still a beater. I mean, it was old. It was just not a great car, just a cheap car we got. We were just hoping that was the one that was working because it was like the nicest of our 3 cars. But we knew that none of these would work in a big city. We had to like downsize and get rid of them. So we got rid of all 3 cars, bought one car that would work. And so we got our car attached to the moving truck, our one vehicle. We have our Penske, all of our stuff inside the back of this truck, and we're driving down the highway. And as we're cruising down the highway, you know, we're excited to get to this new place, right? You've been there, you're ready to make a move. And so we're excited. I'm hitting the gas. I'm driving down the highway with all of our stuff in the back. I'm so excited. But I realize that the moving truck will not go as fast as I want it to go. I mean, we're on the highway. I can go like a much faster speed, but the U-Haul will not get above, 55, whatever the limit it was. And it just wouldn't go. I'm thinking, maybe it's because I'm pulling this vehicle behind us. And so I hit the gas, and it's not going anywhere. Maybe it's because I got a lot of stuff, and I don't have all that much stuff. Why is it not going faster than this speed? And I come to find out that something you might know is that on a U-Haul truck or a Penske truck, a lot of times these moving trucks are driven by people who are not experienced truck drivers. And they don't want to have the liability of a lot of accidents, and so they put something in that engine of that vehicle to keep it from going too fast. What's that called? It's a governor, right? Some of you know this. It's a governor, and it keeps you from going faster than you probably could otherwise had they not installed that. And this governor is a limiter. It restrains the vehicle from going too fast to where it could cause a problem or an accident. This idea of restraining myself, of putting a governor of a limit on my life to saying, God, I don't want more than what you want for me. That is a courageous and a bold prayer. And here's what I think is underneath it. It's this understanding that there's times where I might desire something that's actually destructive to my future. That you and I could actually desire things that are destructive to our future. That even worse, we could desire things that are damaging to our souls. And God knows this. God knows that for us to go full tilt, all out, just to reach for whatever it is that we want in life, that if he were just to open up the gates and just let us go, that would actually could be damaging to our hearts and our souls. So there's an interesting filter that I think if we could see our lives from, it could actually change and benefit us. And kind of go with me on this journey. It begins with this question. It's in your notes. How sincerely can I desire what God desires? How sincerely can I desire what God desires? Because whatever we desire, for good or for bad, if it's not what God desires for us, is not in our best interest. But if I could align my desires with God, think about this, then that is the safest and also the most dangerous place to be. It's the safest because it's the furthest from sin and things that would destroy me, but it's also the most dangerous and exciting and adventurous because it's rebelling against a tame and ordinary life. It's saying, God, I'm gonna go on a journey with you, and whatever you want in my life, I'm open to that. I'm surrendered, like we just sang, I'm surrendered to that. And God, whatever it is that you wanna do, I'm all in. And so God, lead me, I'm available. And so this is a prayer that we're willing to pray when things are aligned with God's desires. So if my prayer is God bless me, and that's what God wants, then I like aligning my desires with God. And if my prayer is God protect me or lead me to a better situation, then I'm all for God's desires being aligned with mine. The problem is, and this is where I think we can learn so much today, I'm so excited about this, is that I think the challenge is that when our desires are not lined up with God's desires, we tend to push back. For example, God may want sacrifice from me. He may want restraint so that he can grow up things in me like contentment or trust in him or greater faith. This prayer, Proverbs chapter 30. Did you catch what it said here? Proverbs chapter 30. Give me neither poverty nor riches, but only my daily bread. It's saying, God, my goal is not to just get whatever I can. It's whatever you want me to have. So here's the point. Spiritually mature followers of Jesus have the muscle of restraint. Restraint. I was thinking about this idea of restraint, and you know, there's this thing out there right now. Have you seen it? The mannequin challenge? Where a bunch of people get together, maybe it's at a house party or something, and they're hanging out, and everybody strikes a pose, right? And they don't move, but then someone walks through the crowd with a camera and they catch everybody in their frozen positions. Here's the Dallas Cowboys with the mannequin challenge. Now, at Church Experience, we don't want to miss out on the party. We don't want to miss out on the excitement. So I saw popped up on Facebook, a crowd of Church Experience people were at a house having some fun, and they decided to do the mannequin challenge. So here's some Church Experience peeps checking out the mannequin challenge. Most impressive is that baby, right? It's like some of you like have young kids, you're like, I just learned a new parenting strategy at bedtime. Kids, mannequin challenge in your beds, go. It's like, now why is that whole thing so impressive to us? It's just people being still. Like, it's because we don't normally see that. People don't stop. They're always moving, always coming, always going, and we don't normally practice restraint. But when we stop, when we slow down, that's gets our attention. And what gets God's attention is when we practice the muscle of restraint in our spiritual lives. When a prayer like this is prayed, it gets God's attention. God, I so want my desires to be aligned with your desires that God, don't give me too little, don't give me too much, because I don't want anything to pull me away from what you want. So God, help me just to stay focused on you. So God, whatever you want for me, that's what I want. And for better or for worse, God, I'm all in. I want what you want in my life. Spiritually mature followers of Jesus have the muscle of restraint. Listen to what Jesus said about this in Matthew chapter 16, verse 24. He said, whoever wants to be my disciple, my student, my follower, they must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. He says, if you want to be my follower, you must deny yourself. That's restraining yourself. It's holding yourself back. That's what we call sacrifice. You know, what if God allows some forms of suffering in our life so that we can become more God-dependent, less self-dependent, less worldly riches dependent? It's an understanding, a very mature understanding that there's actually things in our life that might be difficult that are actually very good for us. Romans chapter 5, listen to verse 3. It says, not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings. In our sufferings. We find joy even in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. So I understand that suffering can lead to perseverance, which develops character, which brings hope. And so I want hope, but I don't necessarily want suffering. And it's saying, you know, that there's actually some difficult things in our life that can bring about good when we hold ourselves back, or when even sometimes when we struggle, there's good that can come out of that. See, the filter of seeing our life through this lens, that even the filter of suffering can be powerful. I want you to think about, where's the greatest suffering in your life right now? Where's the greatest struggle in your life right now? Where is it? That area of your life is ripe for the potential. It's ripe for the potential of God showing up and growing you up in whatever it is that you're struggling in. Like, that could be a hot spot of God's activity in your life that maybe you haven't identified. Like God might want to show you his amazing provision in that struggle, something that you're lacking. God might want you to see him more clearly in your life, and he's using that suffering in your life to help you see him better. God might want to grow up your faith and your trust, maybe bring in some discipline to your life that you didn't have before through this thing that is hard in your life. God might be giving you a story that you can share from your suffering to help others. See, there's so much that God wants to do in our life, even through suffering. You know, I think there might be some forms of suffering that we escape from, that we try to avoid, where God might actually want to bring good into our lives from them. For example, any kind of discipline or correction we don't like. We try to avoid because it's no fun. Honestly, it's no fun to go through those things. And so we try to escape them. Where God may want to use moments of strife and difficulty, he may want to bring good things out of the bad in our life, but we sometimes run from it. Let me give you an example. Do you remember the last time that you had a need? What did you do about that need? If you're like most people, what you probably did not do was go before God and say, God, please provide for me in this need. God, here's my need. I'm asking you to provide, and I'm going to wait on you, even when I lack what I actually want in my life right now. There's this thing. It might not have even been a need. It might have just been something you wanted. Instead of waiting on God to provide, what you might have done, what a lot of people, probably most people do, is they go out with their credit card and say, I'm going to meet that need. Here's this thing I want in my life, so I'm going to go get it. Even though I can't really afford it, I'm going to go, it's okay, I have the limit. I'm going to go get this thing that I want. And what happens when we do that, we avoid that uncomfortable season of not having what we really want, is we miss opportunities for God to produce miracles in our life. Like, why does everybody else have these amazing stories of God? Like, maybe it's because you're preempting God's provision in your life by not putting yourself in moments that are uncomfortable. You're saying, I don't want to be in a spot where I don't have what I want. And maybe God wants to provide for you, but you're not giving it an opportunity. You say, I'm just going to swipe my card and then I'll take care of it. And so you're turning to Visa instead of to God. And you're saying, that's how I'm going to meet my needs. I'm going to go to, and God said, I could have provided for you, and you miss an opportunity for a miracle. Instead of praying about what the need was, the thing you wanted in your life, and giving God an opportunity to provide in an amazing way, we say, I'm just going to go take care of it. Or maybe worse yet, we not only miss an opportunity for a miracle, we miss an opportunity for God to show us that despite the fact we don't have what we think we need, He is all that we need. And so God, in his amazing understanding and wisdom, knows that abundance and just having everything that we want is not always in our best interest. And so sometimes he asks us to restrain ourselves, to sacrifice. And so how do we exist inside that tension of knowing that there are things that we want to go after, but knowing that maybe that there's times where God allows us to be in a time of need, and that's good for us. What's the secret to existing in that and always being thankful? And it's the week of Thanksgiving. I'm excited about Thanksgiving. I think of grandma's ping pong table in her house where we all got together because it was the biggest table. And my Uncle Ron was there before when I was a little kid, before the digital revolution. And he had the big VHS camera on his shoulder like a news anchor walking around, getting shots of the family and then the food and the dessert. And I just remember these great moments at Thanksgiving as a kid. And I'm excited about the day of Thanksgiving. But what about the way of Thanksgiving? Like, how do I live thankful? Not just on a week. It's great that it's Thanksgiving week, but how do I live thankful? How do I live and exist in this world when there's always the draw for more and better and bigger and the next thing? How do I do that? How do I remain grateful? Well, there's this great man of God named Paul who is writing inspired by God, and he writes something that I think will be very helpful for you. In Philippians chapter 4, this might even change your whole perspective, your whole filter on how you're seeing your life. And man, this is so good. Philippians chapter 4, verse 12. He writes this, verse 11. He says, I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. So he's saying, I don't necessarily have need right now that I'm talking about, because really what I truly need, I've actually discovered something. I've discovered how to be content in every circumstance. I know what it is, verse 12, he says, I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. He's a guy who knows the extremes. He knows the abundance of God and the provision of God. He also knows what it means to be in need and not have what he wants. Now, when he's saying it, he doesn't have what he needs, he's not talking about not having money for movie tickets on Friday night. What he's talking about is he's been like shipwrecked, and he's been hungry, he's been beaten, thrown in a jail, not knowing if he's gonna live. I mean, he's experienced like high highs and low lows. And he's saying, and all these things, I know it is to be in need, I know it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. So these are words I wanna know. He's got a secret, how to be content in every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. And I'm gonna pause there and we're gonna come back to his secret of how to do that. But I think it's worth noting that Paul was someone who was following God's plan for his life, and he willingly put himself into situations that caused him to be in need. So God, I'm gonna follow you regardless of what that means in my life, and it might mean sacrifice for you. It might even mean suffering for you. To be in need, I'm willing to and God, whether I have a lot or a little, I'm okay with it because I want what you want with my life. And so here's what he learned. I'm gonna come back to that, but here's a lesson that's in your notes. We give up to grow up. We give up to grow up. Write that down, because I think that this is a learning that may really help some of us. Think about where you grow most in your life. It's things that you give up. You gave up time to be in worship today. So God's growing you up. We give up time when we serve others, and God blesses us for that. We give up effort to pray intensely about something, but then we realize the amazing fact that God answers our prayers. We give up finances to help the poor or to be generous towards God, and then we realize that God's generosity is greater than ours and that you can never outgive God. We give up our personal dreams to pursue God's desires and realize that God's desires are greater. When we give up something, we grow up. But this is not a message we're hearing from our culture. we're hearing get more and then things will be better. And God's saying sometimes you have to give up so that you can actually grow up. Let me just give you a quick example. I've told the whole story in our first class, if you've ever been to it. But the short version is Jennifer and I, how we met was in college. I didn't want to be in the college that we met in Indiana. I actually wanted to go to California. I grew up, my mom's from California, went out there every other year, and I really wanted to go to school in California. But there was a school in Indiana that was training pastors, and I heard about it, and I felt like God was leading me to go there, and so I ended up going to Indiana, knowing I really wanted to be in California. I'm in a lunchroom. I'm there with a couple friends I grew up with. They introduced me to their suite mate. And they say, hey, there's this really neat girl, you need to meet her. And so we're talking, and I realize she's a great girl. She becomes a friend. We get to know each other. She knows that my desire is to be a pastor and that I also want to go to California. And she said, hey, that's what my dad does. He's a pastor in San Diego. You should do an internship for him. And so she connected me with her dad, and after my freshman year, I went out to San Diego and did an internship at this church for her dad. And while I'm there, I realized God had totally set me up, fall in love with that girl, the pastor's daughter, and she became my wife now, 14 years and 4 kids and all that, all these years later. And I ended up dating her and living in California for a while, getting married there. And had I gone where I wanted originally, I would have missed even meeting her, right? And so it was one of those examples to me of giving up what I wanted, my personal dream. God gave me back even more than I expected or imagined because I was following him. And there's so many times I've got that wrong, but man, when you get it right and you give up, and then God grows you up and he gives you greater faith to trust in him, man, here's my dream, God, here's my desires, here's what I want, but God, I'm realizing that in the end, you're what I really need. And it's an idea of surrender, and the Bible, again, it calls this sacrifice. 1 John chapter 2, do not love the world or the things of this world. You know, this is sacrifice to say that this world is not my home. One of my good friends, Pastor Kevin Queen, he goes, you know, this world it's kind of like decorating an apartment or decorating a hotel room. Why would you do that? Why would you decorate a hotel room? You're only there for a short time. You wouldn't do that. It doesn't make sense. So why would we invest all of ourselves in decorating this life, because this life is temporary, right? Let me go to Romans chapter 12, verse 1. Romans 12, verse 1, it says, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. So how we really worship God is we live a life of sacrifice. We say, God, I'll restrain myself. I'll sacrifice whatever you ask me so that I can follow you. So how do we live like this? You know, I think the problem is why we don't live like that is because we all have a clause, maybe like some fine print on our agreement with God. You know what I think we really want? I think we probably really want a prenuptial agreement with God. I do. I think we want a prenup with God. Like, God, I'll be in to follow you all my days and live for you and all that, but like, here's the exclusions and the exceptions, the things that don't apply, honestly, because I may want to bail later and do my own thing at some given point, and I just want to be able to have the freedom to kind of do what I want to do in the moment. And so this is kind of how we approach it, and we think that, God, it'd be great to follow you if you never mess with my schedule. And God, if you never mess with my free time, then I'm all into following you. And God, I'll follow you, but please, if don't ask me to ever do anything I don't want to do or take on responsibility for others or carry the weight of leadership or get my hands messy or give to others or be generous towards you or do things that I don't want to do. Because God, honestly, like I want to follow you, but there's certain lines in the sand I just can't cross. And that's how we live. But what I've realized that those who have really made an incredible difference for God and that God's really worked in their lives over the centuries, what you'll see is that these were people who sacrificed what they wanted, their want for comfort in this life. They sacrificed that, and they were willing to give of their blood, sweat, and tears for God and say, God, I'm all in, and whatever you ask, I'm in, like signing a blank contract. God, I don't know what the terms and conditions are, but I'm all in for you because I trust you, and I want to follow you in it. Even when it's hard, even when it's difficult, I'm willing to sacrifice. And you know, Paul, he led the way on this. He led the way on this, and sacrifice. And sacrifice it's not easy. It's restraining yourself. You know, an example of something that you'll see all throughout the Bible is this idea of prayer and fasting. It's like praying, it's kind of like accelerating your prayer life. It's like this intense form of prayer where you fast and you may give up some food, for example, for maybe a meal. and you break away and spend that time that you would have been having lunch and you pray instead. Or maybe you give up food for a few days and you say, during that time, every time I feel those hunger pains, I'm going to use that as prompting to prayer, and I'm just going to pray more and pray more intensely because I'm hungry. And that idea of fasting is like a microcosm of what we're talking about today. It's saying, I'm going to give up something. And there's so much more there we could talk about with prayer and fasting. That's not what the point today. But it's giving up something I want, I need, food. I'm giving that up for a period so that I can get a hold of something that I actually need more, which is God. It's sacrifice. And then you see the mountains move in prayer, and you see these amazing things happen. And you're like, wow. Like, I'm so glad I gave up this because God grew me up and showed me more and blessed me in ways that I never would have experienced otherwise. So what's the secret to living this way in the way of Jesus? Philippians chapter 4, verse 12, going back to Paul's words again, he says, I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty, and I've learned the secret. I want to know what that is. The secret of being content in any and every situation and everything that comes in my life. Because we don't control all the things that happen in our life, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. How do you find thankfulness, the way of thankfulness? Not just the day of thankfulness. How do I find the way of living grateful to God in every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want? You know, you may be in abundance this Thanksgiving, you may be in need. We're going to find ourselves in both of those seasons at different times in our life. And here's what he says the secret is, verse 13. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. The secret is the presence and the power of God that gives me strength in all things. Here's how I put it in your notes. The secret is find God's presence and his power in every single moment. Look for him. Find the presence and the power of God in every moment, whatever you're going through. And some today came in here today and you are suffering, you are struggling. There's some brokenness in your life, or there's some need or some unanswered prayer. Look for God in that moment. It's a ripe opportunity to see the power of God in your life. When I was living in San Diego area, we were heading towards Jennifer's home in East County, and we were taking the Las Coaches exit. And the Las Coaches exit, if you look out over the horizon, you can see as you're exiting the highway, you can see this mountain, this hill. It's got some trees and some rocks on it. And they would always tell me, the family when they're in the car, they say, Brandon, look up at the hill. You can see a face in it. And I could never see it. I mean, I would look, I would strain my eyes, and then all of a sudden we'd be gone, and the moment was over, and I didn't see it. And they're like, it was right there. I thought they were messing with me. Then the next time I would look, and I kind of see some faint, but I couldn't see it. It's kind of like when your friend says, hey, look up at the stars. You know, like, can you see that? Can you see that thing up there? And you're like, I don't see it. I just see a bunch of stars. I don't get what you're talking about. That's kind of where I was. And, you know, but then I would be by myself in the car, and I would be driving off that exit, Las Coaches exit, and I would be looking. This is how people get in accidents, by the way. You know, and so I'm driving off the exit, trying to look up at the mountain, trying to figure out where this face is. And eventually, I could start to see it. I could totally see it, the nose and the eyes. I could see it. It took me a while, but I finally could see it. And then every time I took the exit, it's right there. And I have people in my car with me, hey, do you see that face? I could see it. It's possible that whatever it is that you're going through right now, that you're missing what's right in front of you. And that's the face of God in your life, the presence of God in your life. And that's exactly what you need. But maybe it's because you're looking so much at the problem, and you're forgetting that you have an amazing provider in your life. And you're forgetting that God is with you in the struggle and that he didn't abandon you in it. See, Paul says, I know what it's like to be in need. This is the guy that was beaten, thrown into a prison, and it was still singing to God. Like, he knew that God was with him even in suffering, even in sacrifice. And so he was willing to put himself in situations that were not always ideal so that he could serve God's purposes. He's like, it might even be hard, but it's all good because I'm following God's desires for me, not my own desires. And if you could think about this, if you could come to a place of spiritual maturity where you would say, God, I'm okay with whatever comes my way. I'm going to shoot for the best. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to pour myself in. But God, honestly, like, whatever you want for me, that's what I really want. And that's the secret, Paul says, of being content and thankful in every situation. Here it is as well in 1 Thessalonians 5. I love verse 16 to 18. It says, rejoice always, pray continually, and give thanks in all circumstances. For this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. Give thanks in all circumstances. Not just when there are times of abundance. Because that's when I'm most thankful, when the table is full of turkey and stuffing and food and the dessert's on its way. Like, it's easy to be thankful. God, thank you for your provision in my life. But Paul said, I've learned how to be thankful in every circumstance, not just the times of abundance, but I've learned to be grateful in every circumstance, in every moment, in every situation. Joseph Benson was a 1700s era preacher in England, and he was known for constantly and zealously studying God's word, and he read these verses I just read to you, and this is what he wrote about it. It just blows me away. He said, the person that always prays is always giving praise to God, whether in ease or pain, whether in prosperity or adversity. He blesses God for all things. He looks on them from coming from God and receives them only for God's sake. Listen, this is amazing. Not choosing or refusing, not liking or disliking anything, but only as it is agreeable or disagreeable with the perfect will of God. So he's saying like the apex, the summit of where we could get to in this idea of God's desires are coming to a place, like we sang earlier, full surrender. Where we're saying, God, it's not even really about what I like or prefer or don't like. It really comes down to this idea, God, what do you want in my life? And if I could live like that with that kind of filter, God, is this what you want in my life? Because if so, I'm okay with it. Man, then you're okay with serving somebody else. You're okay with getting your hands dirty and getting down and serving and helping someone else. And then you're okay with sacrificing some of your time because it's not about your agenda or what you really want to do or feel like doing. You're like, it's not about me. I'm willing to give of myself. And it's not about, is it in my best interest? Because it might not seem like it is. Is this in God's interest? And when you can start living like that, man, it just changes everything. This is what changes a marriage. This is what changes a family or a friendship. This is what changes a career. This is what changes the trajectory of a life. And ultimately, really, it's eternity. It's surrendering to God and saying, God, it's not about me, it's about you. And when we can come to this place of finding God's presence in every part of our life, it's powerful. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 20, it says, always giving thanks to God, the Father, for everything in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Always and for everything. No matter what I'm going through, I'm giving thanks to God. So here's the filter. It's in your notes. Here's the lesson for us. For God's desire for me is a heart condition more than a life position. God's ultimate desire for me, it's not a life position. It's not like it's making this world some sort of like heaven on earth kind of thing. And he does want us to pray, God, your kingdom come and live his purposes here. But he's not trying to, as I heard one person say, pamper us physically. He's trying to perfect us spiritually. See, that's God's aim, to shape you and make you in his image, to change you to be more like him, to see the world as he sees it. And when you'll do that, man, it radically changes everything. It's similar to a guy who, let's just say his father owns the Countryside Mall and has given him some special gift card that you can walk in literally any store you want and you can get anything and it'll be free to you because I own the mall. And the son's like, Dad, seriously? Yeah, like go into Whole Foods. You can eat whatever you want. Just swipe your card. It's all yours. Go down to the clothing store. Just get whatever you want. Go into the food court. Grab yourself a smoothie. It's all free. Any store, the home decorating store, I mean, it's yours. Like whatever you want, it's all yours. And some of you are saying, that sounds incredible. But then you think about that guy on his way to the mall. He sees a little sign in someone's yard. And he's distracted by it. It says yard sale. It's like, oh man, cool. And he pulls into this subdivision and he goes over to the home and there's some cars and some tables and he gets out and he walks through the tables and he's looking for something, but he's not finding what he's looking for. And he finds himself incredibly frustrated because out of all the tables that are there, he cannot find what he's looking for. But he is endlessly rummaging through all this junk, trying to find that thing he's looking for, because completely forgotten about the fact that his father owns the mall and has said, whatever you want, just ask me, it's yours. And I think this is a great analogy for how we live our lives. It's like, God, I'm so frustrated because when I look at my life, I see what I don't have, and I see what I want to see. I see what I don't have that I feel like I want, and we're upset and we're disappointed. We get discouraged easily. We get pulled off track and distracted. And God's saying, look, listen, lift your eyes up. See with a different filter. I own everything, and I can give you whatever you need if you'll just ask. But listen, I'm not going to pamper you physically because that would actually be destructive for your soul. So your prayer should be, God, give me what you want. And that's where we started today, this dangerous prayer. God, don't give me too much that it would distract me or too little that it would distract me. God, give me exactly what you want. Give me what I need each day, my daily bread. God, give me what I need today so that I can stay focused on you and your mission and what you want from me. Because God, I believe that there is abundant provision in walking in your steps. And you're going to give me everything I need because you are able. And sometimes that's going to be less than what I think I need, but I'm going to realize in that need that, God, you're more than what I actually need. And God, you're what I really want. And so I'm going to live surrendered to you, full on for you. And it's going to be an amazing adventure. And my prayer is going to be, God, make my desires one with your desires. Make my heart one with your heart so I can see my world like you see my world. And my hope is that all of us could shape the perspective and the filter we see our lives with. And this will change everything if we could just see ourselves and our lives, how God sees us, and we can desire his desires, which are greater than our own. Right on?
Thanks for joining us at Church Experience Online. Please don't forget to check out the website if you'd like to get more connected, learn more, get your questions answered, or support this movement financially. You're now going to hear a Church Experience Worship original song, and we hope this gives you an opportunity to worship and reflect on what you learned today.
forever.